Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. What if Naruto was born with an Angal bloodline? Part 9. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this and comment for next part. And now let's start the fanfic. The next sacramentum has been completed. Naruto said before he began to bury the body. Naruto then gave one more prayer before walking towards the Kuroshin and placing his hand onto the handle of the sword, instantly feeling the power coming off the sword. Naruto could immediately feel the overflow of energy coming off the blade and could tell that it was a special weapon just because of the energy going through his body. He never knew what it was like to hold another's bond weapon of this magnitude, as he held multiple bond weapons before and each one were weak beyond belief, which was one of the reasons that he was able to give all of his friends those weapons. However, this weapon was different and very unique, something that only a truly experienced warrior could use. Oh yeah, this baby is going to stay mine. Naruto thought before he extended his wings and took off into the forest to continue his training, but before that he needed to get some rest. He was by far too tired to continue for now. Time skip. 5 days later. 5 days passed after Naruto instructed the teams to split up and go on their own for training before he secluded himself alone with the forest below an extremely tall cliff. Each member of the group walked towards the cliff's location in torn, dirty clothes to indicate that they each worked hard to make the blonde shinobi proud. The two teams could currently be found walking towards the same cliff that they last saw Naruto jump off of when he went to go do his own secluded training like the rest of them, with each one thinking of all the possibilities they could gain from this one experience. Each one were inwardly proud at the success they've seen in creating their own techniques, with only a couple of them mastering the moves since they understood the concept easier while the others were continuously working on mastering their moves. Each genin was proud at their hard work to accomplish the task of having a jutsu to call their own, while the two junin were surprised by the genius the blonde shinobi constantly showed them without hindrance. I know we've only been in there for 5 days, but it feels like several weeks went by. Tenten said with the genin nodding as they walked towards the cliff that Naruto jumped off of the day their training began. I know, Tenten, but it is worth it to have this feeling with all the training I've put myself through. I feel completely refreshed and ready to fight alongside Naruto-san. Lee said in a calm tone that still held a bit of his personality intact, but not to an extent that it had been months ago. Let's just hope that Naruto-kun didn't hurt himself in that forest. He goes a little too far during training at times. Hinata said with her friends nodding their heads since they knew what she said was the truth. Anyway, we need to find Naruto so that we can get this mission over with and head back home. Kurenai said, not trying to sound like a person desiring to go home but a person desiring to be near a certain someone alone. All the shinobi soon nodded their heads and quickly found that they were near the location Naruto jumped off of that was blocked by a border of trees. They soon walked past the border and immediately caught the sight of a tall blonde with bandages tied around his arms from his hands to his shoulders along with black fingerless gloves over his hands. He was currently wearing a forest green flak jacket with the arms torn off and what appeared to be a clan symbol on the back, with a black shirt underneath it and black pants with a sheathed sword on his waist. I take it you guys had fun training, Naruto asked as he turned around to see each member of the group nodding their heads, causing a smirk to come to his face. Then I guess it's time for us to get this mission underway. Damn. What's up, people? I know that this is quite surprising to most of you that this took me so long, but after a month of planning and going through a momentary period of writer's block, I have finally finished this chapter. Over the last month I went through some changes such as hitting 20 on 2/27, trying to catch up on my school work, and trying to get in a date with this girl that I have been dying to go out with for almost a full year. Another thing that happened this year thus far is my revival as a DBZ fan. I don't know how, but for some odd reason I began to watch Nicktoons Network for Power Rangers only. I'm never going to stop being a fan of that show, and saw that Dragon Ball Z Kai was on and nothing else was on, not even Law and Order, SVU, the best one of the series. So I decided to bite the bullet and watch the show, then next thing I know, all I could think about was DBZ all weekend. I truly love DBZ and it kills me that I haven't even progressed in my story, so I promise that I will get that story completed this year. What is also going to happen is that I will be doing something called AmeriCorp for about a year, which involves me going from my home in North Miami, Florida to my home in Parsippany, New Jersey. A huge transition that will see me getting paid a weekly allowance and would free up my time, so more updates might come, but as a lot of people know, things don't go as planned no matter how well thought out and carefully researched they are. Oh well, anyway, I hope you guys like this one, although it's probably not my best one, but I still tried. Given that I had at least 4 months to write this, some may think that I should have done a better job, but that can only come from people that don't write their own material, so don't bother getting that perception. Anyway, let's get this going. P.S. If you're wondering how I updated, Red Devil Key's writing new chapter for Black Flames and he'll let you know what to do. Ch. 10 Street Dreams. A lone figure glanced to the outside of his castle with high adrenaline pumping through his veins, as he was expecting this day to be the day that he rids the world of that jackass once and for all. He wanted to savor in the excitement as the sun was beginning to set and slowly make the moment of the hour come. It was actually making him count down the seconds in which he knew that person would make his appearance and wreak havoc to his secure building. He was waiting for Namikaze Naruto, the war angel, to find him. Come to be boy, come fast and strong so that I may put you back in your grave and seal you for good, he thought to himself before turning to see the sight of one subordinate bowing before him. What is it that you want, my leader? He asked, with the man slowly walking towards his desk area and stand before a large weapon hung up on display. I want you to alert all the forces within the area. An attack will commence tonight from a powerful enemy. The shinobi said with his subordinate looking upward. I take it you already predicted this? He asked with his leader nodding as he took hold of the weapon and pulled it off display, a surge of power flowing through his body when his skin touched the metal surface of the weapon. I heard it from the voice of the wind and it instructed me of what shall occur, which is something that I truly can't wait for. The leader said as he slammed the butt of the weapon on the ground, causing a small quake to occur while the subordinate nodded once more before standing up. Very well, sir. I shall inform the ranks. He said before he left in a quick burst of speed, leaving his leader to his thoughts. I knew the day would come when you would try to find me, now come to me. Come to your death, you bastard. Meanwhile, forest outskirts. Naruto stood with his arms crossed and a wide smirk across his face after having just witnessed his group's display of their newly invented jutsus. He was quite proud of how well they were able to perform them with only a week of training going into them, thus reassuring him that they were indeed progressing on a good foot. His main goal at the moment was to ensure that the next generation doesn't suffer under the guise of false teachings and lack of understanding in the shinobi world. He remembered when he first met all of them and how weak they were due to misguided lessons by their teachers in what the true world of shinobi, thus forcing him to act on it and try to turn everything around. It from that instinct that made Naruto's heart swell with pride as he watched someone that was as scared and broken-minded as Hinata transform into the person that she was always meant to be, had certain bullshit not got in the way, of course. He slowly gazed at each of the genin and took a few quick glances towards the Junin, more Kurenai than Guy since he knew where she was when they first met. The woman looked the best out of everyone. Well, that was a no-brainer seeing as how she was the wisest one here, but he could tell that she was now more than used to fighting in her clan's sword style now, due to her body now reflecting what a majority of the female Uehi clan members looked like, with toned muscles and a finer conditioned body than the previous body type, but she was still very far from being considered a master yet. After all, she only on the first level of the style. Alright everyone, I must say that I am very impressed with your creativity and your willingness to create a move outside your comfort zone. Now, I believe that we are ready to fight the current enemy. Naruto said with Tenten raising her hand at that. Naruto-kun, just who is the person anyway? You know, the one you passed that message to from those other shinobi. Tenten asked. although she wished to keep the more important question on hold until the proper time came to ask it. His name is Kajayaki Taiyo. We were once taught under the same master before he betrayed us. Naruto said with everyone's looking up at that, as the news of someone being taught under the same master as Naruto meant that he was possibly just as strong. Is he as strong as you? Neji asked, since he was sure that whoever was able to train under the same master that Naruto was trained under must be on the same level. He's about as strong as a mid-high Junin in terms of chakra with an Anbu captain skill class, which is somewhat amongst my level, but I could very well be below his own. Naruto said as if it was nothing worth stressing over. If he's above your level, then why do you sound so calm? Lee asked with Naruto shrugging his shoulders. My skill level under certain classified terms would be considered high Junin, low Anbu class, although it doesn't matter one bit if his skill level is above mine, as I got enough chakra in my body that surpasses even the Sandames. I'll be just fine up against him. Naruto said, causing everyone to look at him in surprise, but before another question could be uttered, Naruto simply raised his hands to stop any attempts at questions. Look guys, save your questions for later. Right now we need to get ready because tonight's going to get very hellish for all of us. Konoha. Team 10's training area. The 3 genin that formed Team 10 were currently relaxing in their training area, awaiting their bearded sensei to arrive, though he did warn them earlier that he would be late today, since he was trying to get a mission for them outside the village. The 3 genin immediately understood and as such was now waiting for the man to arrive after just completing a small warm-up session to get the blood running smoothly through their system. Choji laid his back on the ground and ate a small bag of chips, his first of 3 bags that Naruto instructed him to eat since the blonde teen wanted him to focus on his techniques and not on his stomach intake. Shikamaru was currently taking a glance at the clouds and enjoying the peaceful tranquility that he rarely gets to enjoy nowadays due to Naruto making damn sure that he wasn't the same lazy teenager that he was barely a year ago. Ino was also sitting down and doing something that she rarely did all day, and that was taking care of her outward appearance and changing some things. Ever since Naruto came into her life and made her truly see what this world was, she made a personally vow to herself that she would not only make Naruto proud of her but earn Naruto's looks her way, regardless of the competition for the blonde teen's heart. She decided to work a new hairstyle today and put her hair into a single large braid with 2 bangs sticking out in front of her face. Normally she would do this to attract boys, but after Naruto placed some strict disciplinary style of teaching her, her whole new outlook on her life changed drastically and she was now all about business. Besides that, there was nobody within this village that she felt was worthy of her, nobody but Naruto. It feels kinda strange going back to the old habits we once had before becoming a team. Ino said, slightly surprised by the actions of both hers and her 2 teammates, who she had to admit was growing on her to the point that she considered them her brothers. That's mainly due to that troublesome blonde constantly keeping us focused and not allowing us to falter in our progress towards change. This is possibly the first time I have gotten the chance to watch the clouds without having gone through hours of training and reviewing some new techniques to add into my arsenal. Shikamaru said, inwardly cringing at the endless hours of training Naruto put him through. Oh, that reminds me of something. I got a new move that I just finished creating up until last week. Choji said, causing looks of surprise to come upon the face of his teammates. You too, Choji? Ino asked, since she remembered having a brief conversation with the blonde teen that told her he would be out on a mission for at least 3 weeks. Yeah, it was so strange since Naruto just appeared before me and handed me a scroll before he left in a puff of smoke. Choji said, remembering the scroll that Naruto left him that detailed what the blonde teen wanted for the large genin to create in the time of his absence from the village. The same thing happened to me as well, but that scroll he left me was very helpful in making my newest jutsu and learning several others within it. Do you guys want to show it? I mean, it's not like Naruto-kun said we couldn't show each other. Ino said with both boys nodding, but before anything else could be said an explosion of smoke was heard and soon all 3 genin saw the appearance of their sensei, who was currently rubbing out a cigarette on the ground before pulling out another one and placed it in his mouth before walking towards his team. Okay gang, today we will be embarking on a C-rank mission outside the village and deliver something of importance to the capital of Fire Country. The document is so important that the Hokage requests that we pick it up at his office as a unit. Asuma said with his team nodding before they got up and walked towards the front gate of the village with the Sarutobi member igniting the smoke and quickly felt the comfort of the nicotine flow through his system. The group arrived to the office of the bearded Junin's father and saw the old man currently reviewing over a document before looking up and saw the form of his son with his team. The old man then picked up a scroll and tossed it towards the bearded man. There you guys go, you have a 1-week time limit. Hiruzen said with the group nodding before they turned to walk out of the room, but before they could, the door opened to reveal the forms of the remaining members of Team 7. The two genin under the leadership of Kakashi stood with facile expressions that said, "Give me what I want or die." Ino Pig, what are you doing here? Sakura asked with a surprised look on her face, though she was met with a slightly tired expression, but not at the appearance of the pink-haired girl but because the girl was bound to try insulting with the Uchiha being present. I'm here because my team just got a mission and we're about to leave. Ino said with Sakura looking even further surprised before looking at the Hokage. Hokage-sama, why did they get the opportunity to get a mission out of the village when they are the weakest team in the village and we have Sasuke-kun on ours? Sakura said while inwardly smiling at the shot she just took at Ino and was hoping that Sasuke was proud of her insult. Haruno-san, you would do well as to mind your tongue on what you say about your fellow genin, especially those that hail from shinobi clans while you yourself hail only from a measly civilian clan that runs the Konoha library and several bookstores. Hiruzen said, not liking that comment the girl made and was sure that it was mainly due to her presence near the Uchiha. But Hokage-sama, Ino Pig's team each held some of the lowest stats in the academy. Shikamaru-san is the laziest person I've ever met, Choji-san is more focused on eating than training, and Ino-san's the weakest kunoichi in from the academy. Sakura said, although she knew that that wasn't 100% true, as she knew that she was weaker than Ino, but that didn't mean that she was going to admit it. Kakashi sighed deeply as he pinched the bridge of his nose, as he knew what was coming up after his student's blatant disrespect of her fellow genin. Sakura, Ino said, causing the girl to turn towards her former best friend only to be surprised by the sudden slap by the blonde-haired girl. Sakura then looked up and could only stare in shock at the pissed-off orbs of Yamanaka Ino. Listen here Haruno, you are never to insult my teammates ever again, because when you insult them you insult our clans that are fighting to protect your sorry excuse of a shinobi. You are also insulting our teachers that have worked hard in getting us on the right path and one of them happens to be Naruto-kun. Ino said before pulling the girl up to her face by her collar so that she can get as close to her face as possible, and nobody will insult him, not even you stuck-up piece of Haruno shit. Ino said before shoving Sakura into the ground before she looked towards her teammates, who weren't even showing expressions of surprise but more so of thankfulness. Sakura lay on the ground in pure shock at the blonde girl's reaction, completely failing to notice the girl's team leave the room and walk towards the gate to start their mission. Kakashi simply shook his head before he spoke up. Hokage-sama, we will take the next available D-rank mission. Kakashi said with Hiruzen nodding his head before going through a small folder that listed D-rank missions, trying to find some that would properly punish the girl's rude behavior and teach Kakashi a lesson on discipline. I think you will. Hiruzen said while pulling out 5 missions for Team 7 to take. Your following missions include the following: walking the Inuzuka clan's dogs, painting several houses and fences, helping an old lady take home groceries from a convenience store, babysitting a couple's child while they're out for a while, and capturing the daimyo's wife's cat Tora, again. Naruto's group. Later on, the group stood on the outskirts of the hideout that their enemy was currently residing in with barely a sound escaping from the area. Naruto knew that this was due to the enemy indeed being someone that he knew, as this was a message that told him, "I'm waiting for you." While Naruto wasn't one to deny a challenge, he felt that he should be further discreet on this matter. So he turned to the group behind him and then began to give out the proper instructions on handling this matter. "Okay guys, it looks like these guys have already prepared for our arrival, since that was what I was expecting from the enemy. He's not going to be playing around when it comes to me, so he's already had his defenses enhanced around certain perimeters. So we will be setting up attacks around 3 different areas that will be performed by each of us respectively," Naruto said as he closed his eyes, properly placing together in his mind what they should do. 30 seconds would pass before Naruto nodded his head and began to write down instructions on what he wanted done. After that, he nodded his head and pointed towards the Kurenai's team. "Okay, the first group will serve as the infiltration squad, which will be Kiba, Hinata, Tenten, and Kurenai. Your talents works in great conjunction with one another for this one task, as you all is the fastest within this group and you're better serving as the infiltration group. I want you guys to get inside first, and once I send the first strike, you guys are to pounce. However, be aware that they may have pre-planned for this strategy, but don't worry, that still won't make a difference." Naruto then looked towards the second group. "You guys, Neji, Lee, Shino, and Guy will serve as the sabotage group, since they will use all forms of defensive maneuvers in order to stop us. You guys are to ensure that they don't get the chance to properly form their strategy against us," Naruto said before he pointed towards 2 points on the base. "Those sections are where the enemy will suspect us the most, so we are going to give them just what they wanted, but it won't necessarily be as smooth as they desire it, because by the time you guys start, they would have already lost a majority of their focus and would be extremely lost," Naruto said as he quickly handed both Kurenai and Guy scrolls that detailed what they would need to do, while Kurenai looked on in confusion before voicing a question in a low whisper. "How will they be placed in that position?" she said, although she held a very high suspicion that she knew what would come next. "That because I will be going in as though group. I will start the chain reaction that once it succeeds will have all theirs crawling on their knees, plus this will give you all a massive test to see where your limit is exactly," Naruto said with a smirk on his face, knowing that all that training would be great for them. The way he set up the plan was for each group to have a proper challenge set before them that would guarantee to show each individual their strength and where they stood for the time being. He then saw their expressions and quickly spoke up. "Don't worry, these guys are not even a challenge for me, since all they can do is try to swarm over me. They won't even make me regret taking a stroke of my sword against them," Naruto said with everyone getting a little easy but still held the worried expressions. "You just try to be careful, Naruto-kun, we don't want you to get hurt is all," Tenten said with everyone else nodding but no more so than Hinata and Kurenai, since they were the most worried. "Don't worry about me, as that will only lead to defeat, and that's the last thing I want to happen to either of you. A couple of lousy mercenaries won't cause me to bat so much as an eyelid," Naruto said, although he was inwardly hiding his doubt on whether or not he'll make it out in one piece. He didn't doubt whether or not he would survive, as he knew that he wasn't ready to go to heaven or hell yet, but what he did doubt was that his opponent wouldn't necessarily be easy pickings. This man was ready for a fight, he could taste it in the air, but he would be ready as well. After one last debriefing, the group then disbanded, with Kurenai giving one last look to Naruto before running to her position. With Group 1 each arrived to their spots very fast, and were already prepared for the wood bow that Naruto would bring to the campsite. Tenten and Lee were very quick to take care of those standing outside of the site to watch out for any intruders that may have been lurking in the outskirts of the site. Lee would take care of the closer targets by knocking them out with his fast strikes, while Tenten took out the targets out of reach with shurikens hitting the pressure points on their necks, thus knocking them out. Kurenai would then cover her group under a genjutsu that would cause any onlookers to think that they were invisible in view. "That was easier than I thought it was going to be." Naruto-kun wasn't joking when he said that the enemy would be prepared. Tenten said, remembering seeing a few group of bandits patrolling the areas that Naruto described would hold the most out of all the areas in the campsite. Don't get arrogant, as Naruto also stated that they would be more than likely to have already planned for this to happen. Kurenai said, remembering what Naruto wrote down in his scroll that stated the other possible scenarios prepared by the enemy. What appeared to be the situation right now was a separate scenario that Kurenai figured was the best course of action the enemy could take. Kurenai then looked towards her student and saw that the girl already had her Byakugan active and was looking beyond the walls to survey any possible enemies hiding behind the wall and in the surroundings. Sensei, we can move on. The enemy isn't set up behind that area, Hinata said, pointing to the spot that they would have to go to. Very well, we will attack when Naruto begins the operation, she said with each one nodding before she pulled out the scroll that Naruto handed her and then bit her finger hard enough for it to bleed lightly and then rubbed the blood along the bottom of the scroll, causing the words to glow in light blue neon before vanishing. 10 seconds would then pass before the sounds of explosion would go off in the camp, thus alerting the group to attack. With Group 2, Guy's group were different than Kurenai's, as they already taken care of their enemy with Kiba sniffing them out as well as Neji pinpointing their location, right before Guy attacked the guards and knocked them out. The group then hid themselves behind the trees in the surrounding forest with Shino having his insects suspect the area for a brief moment. When word came back that they were in the clear for the moment, they all then hopped over the wall and quickly hid behind the shadow of one camper, thus covering them in a veil of darkness. Neji then activated his Byakugan to monitor the area until Naruto began the operation, while Guy performed the same method that Kurenai followed with her group and soon the same sequence occurred. All 4 shinobi were eagerly waiting for the boy to start the process, as they couldn't wait to test their new skills and see where they were now. Their wish would soon come when Neji alerted them that a large bolt of lightning would soon strike the ground in exactly 0.87 seconds, and that would soon cause them to charge into battle. With Naruto, Naruto sat in a deep lotus position, currently waiting for his team to be ready for the attack that he was sure going to change their lives all over again. He was currently within his mindscape, sitting on top of the head of one Kyuubi no Kitsune, who was lying on the ground with both arms under his chin and his tails laid on the ground. It looks like you're getting quite the blast from the past again, Kit. Kyuubi asked with Naruto scoffing. Since when has life ever given us a moment away from the past? I'm still trying to figure when death will make his appearance and when we'll see Black Hammer again. Naruto stated with Kyuubi laughing slightly to himself. Please boy, back in my day when I was just but a couple centuries years old, I was already reliving my past on almost a minute-to-minute basis and it would piss me off to no end. I fear that that may be what's happening to you right now since my bad luck seemed to always occur with that mother and great-grandmother of yours. Kyuubi said, remembering his first 2 vessels always seeming to get mixed in some kind of situation that had to do with sections of their past rearing its ugly head every now and then. I guess that just adds more to your trouble list, which officially makes the number 29 or bad things you bring to the table, although your high number of 206 still reigns supreme. Naruto said with Kyuubi scoffing. Whatever, it's not like you can say that you're all good either. You still have a list of 34 bad qualities compared to your 283 good qualities. The Kyuubi no Kitsune said to his vessel before hearing the teen laugh slightly. What pray tell would cause you to add another problem to the bad list? Naruto asked with Kyuubi looking towards the blonde sitting on his head. Well, for starters, you won't bang that red-eyed chick that got the hots for you, along with the Hyuga girl and that hot purple-haired lady that's always hitting on you. Kyuubi said. Kyuubi, I told you before and I'll tell you again, I'm not going to force myself on girls that don't want it yet. Kurenai plans on waiting till I'm older before making a move, though I suspect that she will wait until I hit 15. Hinata-chan is probably going to wait until we are both alone so that she can tell me how she feels personally, and Yugao is just playing around with me, you know that yourself. Hey, I told you after the bond contract was made between you and I that our senses and mentalities would one day come to the point where we are the same being with two separate minds sharing a body. Your body feels the same urges I feel and your hormones function the same way as mine, and right now mine are flaring like a ing holiday fireworks show or a girl getting turned in and out by a she-male Lee. Kyubi said, knowing that that was indeed true, having witnessed that firsthand after meeting a female demon that held the unique ability to properly mate with both males and females. They once hung out together and the female asked if he wanted to find two girls and have a race. The goal was set up so that whoever gets their girl to orgasm the most would earn the right to have the other's girl and would have to witness the other one have. Of course Kyubi accepted with the full intention of losing to watch hot girl-on-girl action, and once he did lose, he would be forever shocked to see the female demon demonstrate her ability when she grew out of her female genitalia and would then proceed to the girl's already fully pleasured andhole, would bring her to a whole new sensation of bliss. He would see the female work her tongue in ways that would make a snake jealous, thrust moves that would put even the creator of to shame, and some moves that he had no idea could be performed on the human body. Whoever heard of a move called the pretzel? Well, he never did, but after that night, the imagine would forever be burned into memory. Needless to say, the male demon felt shame come over him after seeing the female he just pleasure into having 10 orgasm would then have a record 35 with the female demoness, who must have revived her strength with some type of technique. I can understand that, but it's not like someone else is going to come by and sweep them up off their feet. Naruto said with Kyubi laughing to himself. Kid, remember that anyone in the world could steal your girl or girls away, as I learned the hard way that females could do it far easier than males, since females tend to go both ways, being either straight or gay. Kyubi said with Naruto waving it off as if it were nothing, though he would inwardly file a note into his memory banks to watch out for any chance of getting into a bed with a she-male. He knew some already and he didn't plan on going through that with them. Whatever, it doesn't really matter right now anyway. There are far more important matters at hand. Naruto said before feeling the signal go off. It's time, Kyubi. Naruto said with Kyubi nodding. I take it that you're in need of some power. Kyubi asked his partner, knowing what the answer was before it was given. Of course, but that's not the only reason. I want to inform you that I will only need the zero tail amount for the first couple of seconds before I infiltrate the main building, where I'm going to need you to keep a one-tailed portion of chakra focused around my body. I'm going to need the extra chakra for this fight. Naruto said with the Kyubi sounding quite surprised. It seems as if you're not going to take any chances with this guy, but then again after what happened last time I guess I shouldn't be shocked. Kyubi said before he began to add his chakra into Naruto's system, his chakra mixing perfectly with the boy's chakra. Okay, the chakra is at your command, have fun. Kyubi said with Naruto nodding before he closed his eyes. I will, Kyubi, thanks again. Naruto said before opening his eyes again to see that he was back in the main world. Okay, let's begin. Naruto said as he pulled out a scroll before biting his thumb and ran the bloody finger through it before a puff of smoke appeared and a set of twin swords appeared in his hand with both blades already drawn with their sheaths on his right side. His wings then appeared behind his back with chakra bursting out of his body before he hopped into the air and sailed along the air until he found that he was currently directly above the campsite. Naruto then held up both arms with the swords humming in the wind before he began to gather energy into the blades. He moved his left arm to the right, causing a spark of lightning to appear on the sword. He then repeated the same process before crossing both blades together with a large surge of lightning appearing around the sword. Naruto closed his eyes as he focused his power on one point until he felt that it was enough and held the sword behind his back. Lightning release. Static dragon burst. Naruto said before sending a cross/downward and caused the lightning to explode and descend towards the ground at an alarmingly fast rate. He soon heard the sound of an explosion, as the lightning hit the ground and caused the sound of thunder to alert everyone that they were now under attack. Naruto smirked to himself before he flapped his wings before descending downward in a swan-like dive, all the while launching several fireballs in random locations that he figured would cause confusion amongst the enemy below. He continued his fall before suddenly flipping himself upright while calling his wings back into his body, thus leaving him with no means of stopping his descent, but he knew that he would be alright as the fall was survivable due to the combination of his shinobi and Jinchuriki status. The moment his feet landed on the ground, the blonde was already on the attack when he tossed both swords towards two panicking bandits, the blades penetrating their foreheads and slicing their brains in half. Naruto then ran towards fallen bodies and grabbed hold of the handles before jerking his arms upward, causing the deceased bandits to slide off the blades and fly towards another set of bandits, who were completely taken by surprise due to their lack of attention. But that would be their undoing, as Naruto sheathed both blades before blazing through a set of seals and called out, "Fire release, dual ignition blast." Naruto called out as he sent two fire blasts at the downed bandits, who were trying to push off the dead weight, and watched as they were burned alive. Naruto then suddenly dropped low to dodge a stab attempt by another bandit with a naginata that thought he could sneak up on the blonde teen. Naruto then snarled before he placed his hand on the ground before using his legs to send a back kick towards the Mon's chin, smirking to himself when he felt his foot connect with the Mon's lower jaw. Naruto then flipped himself to his feet before grabbing hold of the loose spear before suddenly spinning on the ground with the naginata spinning within his hands before sending a wide slash towards the man that was still floating in the air, slicing him in half. Naruto then placed the weapon on his shoulder before he began to slowly walk around the camp, searching for the most powerful signature in the entire camp. Of course, doing this made him an easier target for the bandits that weren't trying to put out any fires or trying to help any of their friends, but what the fools forgot was that he was the cause for this frenzy and wasn't stupid enough to not think ahead. He put a small barrier of chakra that was a little over 9 to 10 yards around his body and was movable, thus allowing him to detect whenever they choose to attack. Naruto would then begin to slice down any bandits that tried to attack him, with the results being tattered bodies lying along various places with their blood covering the ground with more continuing to attack, but they all fell like the same. Naruto then picked his head up when he heard the sounds of more fighting in the distance and immediately felt the presence of his group's unique chakra signatures, thus alerting him that they began to operation. "Let's see if this catches his attention," Naruto said as he called on more of the Kyuubi's chakra, thus causing it to swirl around his body for a brief moment right before it ceased and then began to surround his weapon. Naruto then held the naginata above his head before heaving it with a loud roar, sending it sailing towards the place he was sure his enemy resided in. Enemy's tent. The head of the enemy's group currently stood in front of the window that overlooked his hideout, which was currently in flames due to his blonde-haired enemy's attacks and strategy. The man knew that the blonde was smart enough to see through his prepared plan, so he chose to allow his army to get a sense of arrogance so that it may allow him to plan out a second strategy underneath it all. Now he was watching as the plan he prepared for his army go through without a hitch, seeing as how he wished to get a new one anyway. He chuckled to himself when he heard the sound of screaming from outside, as one of his underlings sailed across his window, blood leaking outwardly and splattering on the window. His eyes then caught the sight of a weapon sailing through the air, aimed directly at his chest, but he wasn't stupid enough to allow it to go through. He then heard the sound of someone entering the room, so he chose to turn to the side to allow the inevitable to happen. "My lord, something is occur," he was saying before the naginata went through the window and pierced through the man's chest, causing him to fall onto the ground, blood leaking out of his chest. The Mon's master walked over to him and grabbed hold of the naginata while looking his subordinate in the eye. "You should have waited for me to begin my true plan, but thank you for taking the shot for me," the man said as he pulled the naginata out, thus causing the blood to fully explode from the Mon's chest, killing him before he could even feel it. The man then walked back over to the window and gazed out to find Naruto standing in the location he chucked the naginata from. He felt his blood begin to boil after seeing the boy's presence and was now ready more than ever to kill him. He was fully prepared to bring the blonde to his knees and cause his blood to spill all over this camp. Then he would claim the boy's weapons as his own and finally prove which one was the stronger of the two apprentices of Matsukani Slayer, the War Dragon. It's time to begin, he thought before he jumped out of the window and into the fight below. Hey guys, welcome to the next chapter in this little story of mine known simply as War Angel. First and foremost, thank you for all those that reviewed, and if this is your first time reading this story, then drop a review when you're finished. I want to first let you all know that I decided to change the working title from the War Angel, Master of the Soul Flame, to the War Angel, Ride of the Four, mainly because I decided to ditch one of the original ideas I had planned for this story, which would have explained the purpose for the title being like that, and because this is focused around the four horsemen, not from the Bible, from Darksiders. Before we begin, I want to let everyone that the reason this chapter took so long was because I had a pretty hard time writing this chapter due to words not flowing well in my mind, so I had to scrap everything once more and start from scratch. Then I noticed that when I wrote the chapter again, it wouldn't work at all. So then I kept on going, and then soon I found out that the chapter I wrote was a damn 20k. So I cut the chapters in half and then built more on this chapter here, and thus this is the result. I also originally planned to have all the fight scenes planned with the techniques set to be revealed, but then I looked at it and realized something that made me mentally smack myself. They looked exactly the same, with character A proceeding to kill off multiple faceless characters and then fighting some face characters and killing them with their new techniques. I also realized that if I did stick with the original style this chapter held, then I would have to copy some else's work, which mind you would work perfectly with what I had planned, and I don't plan on doing that shit ever again. Been there, done that, paid for it. I also realized that minus Naruto's fight and possibly a couple others, their fight scenes wouldn't matter at all, and it would take far too much time and patience to come up with original fight scenes for them. As such, I decided to skip that chapter and move on to the chapter that would have followed afterward and simply give you Naruto's fight plus a view into their past. Hope you guys don't get confused, so enjoy. Ch.11 They reminisce over you. Naruto now stood in the center of the enemy's camp, eagerly awaiting the arrival of his target and getting rid of another negative vine holding on to his sensei's memory in the form of his once fellow student. Of course, while he was waiting, foolish bandits and underlings tried to step up to take him out, only to receive a quick death either by Naruto slicing them in half or allowing them to get within his range and stabbing them through their stomach. These guys were mere tests in seeing how his body recovered after his fight with Argo not too long ago, and so far he was seeing that his body was just fine in terms of reflexes and strength, but there was still that nagging pain going throughout his body that was more of annoyance, but he slightly feared if it would come back to haunt him in the future. However, those thoughts would quickly need to be abolished when he felt the presence that he was waiting for. He felt a smirk come across his face when he saw the figure land exactly 20 feet away from him, standing directly in front of him with the naginata he just threw in hand with blood leaking from it. Taiyo's appearance changed well over the years after he left Slayer's tutelage, though the one thing that never changed was the hatred and bloodlust that was held within his eyes. He now stood at a 6'5" height, nearly towering over the blonde boy, but Naruto wasn't one to take notice of that nonsense. Another thing that changed about the man was that his hair now at his shoulders with a full beard, though the sides were trimmed down to underneath his chin. His current outfit was a white flak jacket that reached his thighs that was open to expose his chest and the entire scar he attained in his fights with black cargo pants and black boots. Naruto could also see that the man held the same naginata that he just recently threw his way, but was now carrying a long sword on his back, which intrigued him because he never saw the guy practice with a sword during their time training. So you finally decided to come out of hiding, Taiyo? Naruto asked with his voice loud enough to reach Taiyo's ears, who only smirked towards the blonde before pulling out the naginata and twirled it in hand before pointing the weapon towards his once fellow pupil. I should say the same for you, War Angel. After all, it was you that went into hiding after Sensei died. I've been relishing this moment for so long that my blood boils just from having a mere thought of it. Taiyo said with Naruto smirking at him again before he suddenly vanished and reappeared in front of Taiyo, his twin swords prepared to strike. Naruto then sent a forceful slash towards Taiyo, but was surprised to see it countered by his now drawn sword, causing a brief struggle to occur between the two warriors. During the struggle, Naruto took a good look at the sword and was surprised by the way it was designed. The blade was a solid midnight black, but going along the back end of the sword was painted blood crimson with appeared to be jagged and sharp edges, almost like teeth. "Like the sword I see," Taiyo said before suddenly pushing Naruto off of him, causing the blonde to skid before suddenly stopping and bringing his sword up to defend against Taiyo's quick slash. "I call this little number Benahansho Crimson Midnight. I had it made a couple of years ago after I finished my sword training," he said before pulling the sword back and sending a harder slash towards the teen, who dodged it by using his speed and sending a slash of his own, though it was countered by Taiyo, causing a third power struggle. "You're going to pay for disrespecting Master Slayer." He was deeply hurt that day, Naruto said, with Taiyo suddenly getting pissed and pushed back harder. "He should have been after you stole what rightfully belonged to me and me alone. That spot in the Four Horsemen was all I had the desire of gaining and you stole it from me," he said as he sent a forward kick into Naruto's midsection, causing the blonde to suddenly roll to the side before quickly getting back up to his feet, with Taiyo slamming the blade into the ground before he picked it back up and spun it in his hand again before sending it towards Naruto, who blocked with the sword on his right. As soon as the blades clashed together, the blonde slid along the ground for a moment before suddenly going back on the attack by getting close into Taiyo's open guard, extending his right hand. "Lightning release. Static edge," he called out, sending the blast of lightning towards the head of his enemy, who simply moved to the side and then pushed the boy away from him. Taiyo then stabbed the Naginata into the ground before going through a set of seals and then slammed his hands on the ground. "Earth release. Spike shockwave," he yelled, with Naruto's eyes widening before he tightened his grip on his swords and took a quick stance with his blades poised to strike. The blonde closed his eyes and began to enter into a calm sense of mind, thus allowing him to locate and feel out for the spikes that would soon be coming for his blood. "God's throne. Almighty push," Naruto said, with spikes beginning to appear before him in amazing speeds before Naruto opened his eyes. Taiyo then watched as his spikes were destroyed in a quarter of a second, with Naruto appearing to have stayed in the same spot the entire time. "So it looks like you mastered that Kenjutsu style of yours," Taiyo said, only to find Naruto panting slightly before he stood up straight. "No, I haven't mastered it yet, I just have it down to a letter," Naruto said before he stood up and let out a loud exhale. "However, I do believe that you and I are in need of getting a wider field for our fight," Naruto said as he quickly jammed his sword into the head of a bandit that tried to stab him in his neck with a knife. The knife then sailed in the air before Naruto grabbed the knife. "We are way too cramped here, don't you think?" Naruto said before chucking the weapon to the head of Taiyo and watching it get embedded into the skull of another bandit, mainly because of Taiyo bending his head and allowing the weapon to kill another of his men. "I suppose you're right. After all, I have been dying to kill you in a proper match anyway," Taiyo said as he grabbed hold of his sword and twirled it in his hand before slicing one of his bandits diagonally, thus allowing a smirk to come to his face when he saw the blood on the weapon oozing down the staff. He then showed Naruto the blooded weapon, with the smirk turning into a dark smile. "This weapon here will enjoy the drink of your blood," he said as he spun the weapon again, which caused the blood to fly off the weapon before he took off to the side, with Naruto following behind him closely. Time skip 2 days later. The bright moonlit sky currently shined high over the land of mountains, with each member of Team Naruto basking in the feeling of calmness it brought and embracing the beauty as it was, taking advantage of any and every moment it brought them. This was something to truly enjoy, especially for the shinobi group, as this was their toughest mission to date, and they were thankful that it was led by a certain blonde-haired shinobi, who couldn't be smirking any bigger than he was now. They all currently sat in a small bonfire, roasting up some deer meat that the boys hunted down after the mission was over. He was truly proud of how his fellow genin came out in the mission, as each one proved to him that they all can work well as a unit. The ones that truly made him proud though was Hinata and Neji, as the white-eyed girl looked to be beaming right now after the mission, and Neji just had this smirk on his face that told the blonde many things that happened to him on this mission. He also saw Lee and Tenten walking with far more confidence than they ever held beforehand. Lee looked as if he climbed a great mountain and was successful in reaching the top without so much as breaking one step in his stride. That new technique must have made him break through the barrier that surrounded his life and caused to see new things in his life. Tenten just looked proud to accomplish the task that was given to her by the blonde teen and looked as if she worked truly hard in making him proud. The Junin were also showing the signs of accomplishment with their new moves, with Kurenai happily wearing her sword on her waist and Guy stating that he felt that he could stand toe-to-toe with God. He could truly see that they worked hard to gain what they gained, and the proof was that smoldering pile of ash that was once a bandit camp. Yet, why didn't he feel the same? He should feel proud about his victory over the man that betrayed both him and his sensei, right? These were the thoughts going through his mind as he stood within an open secluded area that was beyond the place that his group were residing in. He didn't know why, but he just couldn't shake off this feeling regarding his former fellow apprentice and their past transgressions under his master. This was possibly the main reason why he was training so hard in the dead of night, his training clothes looking like a mess with cuts going all over them and dirtied from grass stains and blood. Along with that, sweat stains appeared over his clothes with sweat dripping off his forehead, while his dark clone Kumori currently stood before him in the same manner as his creator expects. He wasn't sweating as profusely. Both beings held onto their swords after having an intense sparring session that nearly dismantled and destroyed all the trees in the surrounding area. But for the blonde-haired teen, this simply meant that he needed to get his skills to a level that was higher than the one that he was on, especially after the grueling fight he had with Taiyo. In fact, it was while fighting that certain memories began to appear in his mind, namely the day that it all started years ago. Flashback. 9 years ago.